my body covered in sin and glory. I've got my right to stay young, don't try and stop me, beauty forever. Aristocratic demon dipped in red peasant flavor. The only kind I savor, an ungodly taste of a fucking beast.
Welcome back to the Coffin Lounge. I am your host, VampireKitten, and today I have a vampire musician that goes by the name of Lucretia Death. Hello. So tell us a little bit about you and yourself, and, just give us a little introduction and tell us what you do.
All right, so my name is Storm Moraweaka, and I go by the singer name of Lucretia Death. I am an ancient historian, becoming an Egyptologist while trying to enhance vampire music for everybody to enjoy, whether you enjoy the fantasy or you actually identify. I do a little bit of both. And just trying to live life and conquer the world.
That's amazing. So how long have you been, I guess let's just start from the beginning. How long have you been involved in the vampire community?
Physically involved, I was 22. I became Father Sebastian's personal assistant back in 2014 in Denver, Colorado. We helped create the Denver Brood together. I helped him fang a bunch of people, did the rites of transformations, and I became his student. So through Strigoi practices, he's helping me along, honing my skills within vampire magic, and then of course events that he holds. And from there I gained access and met a ton of people through Gotham and all over the United States and the world as well.
That's amazing. So actually, let's talk a little bit about the vampire community, because I don't think my listeners quite understand what's involved with it. So can you, I guess, explain just Strigoi?
So the Strigoi is a living vampire practice, and that's basically what it translates to, living vampirism. So as identifiers, what we do is we work with what's called zoas, and let's see here, we utilize energy feedings within our work, not only to help feed us, but also to heighten our skills and our attachments within the current. Unfortunately, I can't go too much into it. I'm not an official media spokesperson for the Strigoi practices, but that kind of gives a general overview, I hope, for people to understand it.
That's fine. Bare bones, like layman terms, because I mean, people could Google that, So because of all of your teachings and things, how did you get involved in music? Like, how did that go? How did you go one day, like, hey, I want to put this into song?
Oh, goodness. Well, ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be a singer. I had a bunch of people, adults and kids, basically say I was going to be like the next Britney Spears. So I've been delving with music, creating music, singing music all of my life. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I was finally able to buy my own beats instead of having to rely on other people, which has always been hard. People have other lives, and, payments too are really hard to get something very, very custom for me. So I found a place where I could buy my own beats, and I thought, oh my goodness, I could literally create my own music how I want to create my own music. And with the help of my friend Ever Snow, we decided to build upon vampiric songs, and the rest is history, I guess.
That's so. What is so? I'm gonna link to your songs, but what is your favorite song that you've created? Because I have a couple of favorites, and I will tell them to you.
Oh, I'd love to hear yours.
Okay. Well, mine. Here, you go first. I'll go second.
Okay. I think the number one song is definitely going to be "I'm a Bite." There's just something so fluid, so aggressive, but I don't want to say romantic, but intimate with it. It's not so violent, but it is aggressive, and it's intimate, and I don't know. I love it. It just makes me, I can't really explain it, but it is one of my favorite songs.
So, going through your playlist here, I really enjoyed Owned. I think that's one of your newer ones. I liked that one a lot. I liked I'm a Bite. And I also liked, I think it was Serpent Divine and Like Bathory. Those are probably my tops.
Yes.
If I had to like choose of your discography, those are definitely my tops. So what goes into creating a song, like, with you? Because you can tell, like, a lot of this music has a little bit of everything in it that kind of represents you. So how do you start developing a song?
So the beginning process is finding a beat. I find that I am most inspired when I hear the actual instrumentals. And from there, I can kind of gain whether I want it to be a storyline or something fun, something aggressive. It always depends on the beat. But then I also find I'm inspired by history or my vampiric practices. I'm working with Father Sebastian right now on songs that relate to the Sabretooth clan itself.
That's cool.
I'll also be doing a song that highlights my other house, the House of Storms, that James Mallory runs. And, just through life itself, my own experiences, within the vampire community that I'm also writing about. But mostly the beat itself is going to be dependent on where I go with my lyrics.
That's really cool. What inspired I'm a Bite?
So
I know I'm asking the hard questions.
I don't want to say embarrassing. No. It's just never thought I would have to explain this, but it's okay. So when I was looking up beats, the beat name itself was I'm a Bite, and it just really fit with the instrumentals. So I was like, I'm gonna keep the name of the beat, and then I'll just write lyrics around that, and it just created a masterpiece in my eyes.
Okay, so I guess let me ask you, what is the most personal song that you've created? Like, what resonates with you more than any other song that you've made? I know I'm asking the tough questions today. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So the ones that are super personal and really relate to me, my experiences actually have yet to be released. So
Very cool.
I'll go ahead and talk about them. So I'm kind of doing like this Taylor Swift thing where I have eras with my music. And so right now I'm getting more away from the aggressive, the party self, which is totally me. I'm absolutely a partier. But now I'm going more into like my experiences as a vampire and what I've gone through, kind of my thought processes. So let me see here. Let's see here. Let's see. Okay, so the biggest one that has yet to be released, because I don't have permission yet, but I'll talk about it. So this one is called the Strigoi Morte. And the name involves the Sabretooth clan, the Order of the Strigoi V. The Strigoi Morte, like the living dead, basically. These are the spirits that we commune with a lot of the times. And I was really inspired to write this song because of Father Vincent's passing. I don't know him. With blood lineage, he is my uncle, since I am like the childer of Father Sebastian. So I wrote this song. He doesn't know that. So if he watches this will be news to him. But I was very inspired by that passing, as awful as it was and is for the vampire community. And just sort of like a remembrance that we're all going to be gone one day. You know, let's not so much live life, but understand it, resonate with it, continue to listen to our songs and the songs of our previous peoples, and, keep remembering them is kind of the goal of that song. And then the next one is called Blood Wars. This one's like straight, pure heavy metal. And this is about all of the drama in the vampire community. So I wrote it in a way that's almost fantastical. You won't know it's related to real events unless you know. So this will be very interesting to see exactly what people come up with. The same with The King of Fools. That song was inspired by a person. I am not going to name this person, but it's somebody that I was closely involved with for like a year or two. A lot of us were actually, and the drama that ensued between this person, another person, and a couple of other people really wreaked havoc on the community. So there's that. So the one that definitely really resonates with me, the song that is released now, would be Death Is My Name. And then let's see here, Owned would be another one. I really, really highlighted my connection to the night. And goodness, I really think that's it. I mean, all my songs represent me in some form of way, even if it doesn't really sound or look like it. There's always some part of me that I stick in there. So
Right. Well, they are all very cool. So what else? What other? Do you have any other passions other than music?
oh yes, ancient history is one of my biggest ones. Witchcraft as well. Um, and traveling's one of my biggest ones too. So I would say those three are one of the biggest pie fractions of who I am.
That's cool. So tell us a little bit about your history with ancient history.
Oh my goodness. Same with vampirism. There's, between vampirism, ancient history, and witchcraft, even before I found terms for them, those are just always things that I've known about me. So with ancient history, I grew up with ancient Egypt. I think probably like 99.9% of us did grow up with ancient Egypt at some point. But it was way more than just a phase. It was way more than just a childhood obsession. It is basically everything that I've based my life around. My whole identity is Egypt, basically. So it only made sense that I would go to school to become an Egyptologist. And I've done lectures all across the world. I did one in Austria, and then I worked at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science as a volunteer, turned into intern, but I had curators ask for me by name to help with the temporary exhibit of mummies that they were doing. I've done a documentary with a guy named Curtis and a bunch of other well-known Egyptologists throughout the field. And I've held artifacts. I've written papers. I'd like to write a book one day, do a dig. I do teachings. I reconstruct the ancient religions like Greece and Egypt. And I teach people how to practice in those traditional ways, because everything gets watered down, mixed with everything, and you just got to go back to basics sometimes. So it's everything to me. It's my whole soul.
So I guess, what are some of your favorite experiences in this kind of path that you've taken?
Well, I have yet to visit Egypt. So if I had, I would say that. But I think it would be the moment when my boss at the Denver Museum surprised me one day. I came in like normal. I believe we were trying to recatalog and organize the artifacts in our department. And EMU is an awful system to work with. It's one of my top two systems I wish I will never work with again. But One day I came in and my friend Jessie, who was also another intern there, she had no idea what was going on. So we're hanging out, we're laughing, we're in the education collections department. And my boss comes in and she was like, you know, we've got to go somewhere and you guys can't go without me. So she had to lead us down, and we go into the bottom floor, go into this room, into this elevator, and she has to slide a card because it's restricted flooring that we're going into. Ooh. So I'm like, all right, you know, we're going like 3 or 4 floors below the ground level. Right. Like, this is truly where stuff is held at. I mean, there are secret rooms without the museum. I really should write a book on it. It was fantastic finding all of these things, but we really go down into these very dark basement-like rooms, and I think there are 5 floors beneath the museum itself, and I think we went to 3 or 4. And I wasn't blindfolded, but I was told to stay back a little bit, and I'm like, what is going on? You know, like, I didn't come to work to try to like hide myself. And all of a sudden, Jessie and Kristen are there, and I walk in and I see our mummies that are out. They're just out. And I've seen these mummies since I was a kid. Like, there was one time I brought my niece to the Egyptian exhibit that they had, and I nonstop could not talking about all of the information. I cleared out the entire exhibit. Nobody wanted to hear me talk. I've seen these mummies since I was like a child, and now they're full force right in front of my face, away from the glass barrier that they normally have. They were literally within hand's reach, and I couldn't contain myself. There were curators there. There were actual people who worked on these mummies to preserve them, and like professional people, and then members, very select members that got to be in this room too. So I definitely made a fool of myself, but I was
you
so...
were full on fangirling in the
yes,
mummy.
I am. Oh my God,
the mummy room.
Yes,
that's really cute.
I dropped to my knees. I was so in shock, like just tears streaming down my face. I couldn't control myself. It was the closest I had ever been to Egypt, and well, outside of the obelisk in Paris, when I went there with Sebastian while he was there. And I was taking photos. We weren't supposed to take photos, but because my boss was there, I was allowed to take photos. So I'm getting close up of the mummy paintings, the bandages, the close up of the ear that you can see from one of the mummies. And I actually did some selfies with them. I'm sure some people will not agree with it, but I mean, these are like my mummies in a way. Right. So I'm taking photos of myself, and my hair accidentally touches the sarcophagus. So in one of the photos, you can see like my boss's fingertips come out and like pushes the hair against my face so it doesn't happen again. I feel awful that even occurred. But oh my gosh, I mean, you could just see detail that even with the glass you just can't see, because you can literally get like nose like this close and just be right there in their face, in their presence. And it was fantastic. I don't think I'll ever have another experience or boss like that again.
That's very cool. That's kind of a crazy story. So you said that you hadn't been on a dig yet. Is that something that you are working towards?
I would like to, but right now with sort of my private life, I can't necessarily take time away to do a dig. Then I have to go there. I have to be there for months because it's all through the winter months. That way you're not dying while you're out in the sun. And probably when my child is older and there doesn't need to be so much of a need for, 2 parents to be around, I can finally go out and do a dig myself.
That'll be cool. Well, that's definitely a bucket list, like something to look forward to and to plan for. At least you'll have, the time to like really plan it out and do it the way you want. So that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, So I guess let's talk about Egyptian gods. I think that would be really cool. Let's talk about that. Who are your favorites?
Oof. Okay, so it's kind of a revolving door. Lately with my craft, I seem to gravitate towards deities when I hear them kind of calling me or their name pops up a lot in my head.
Right.
But the deities that I tend to work with more are Bastet and Thoth, so I have them both on my chest right here. Those are like my original deities, like when I was a kid. Those were the two.
I feel like Bastet is the gateway deity to any sort of practice, and or Sekhmet, especially with the vampire community. So like I feel like those are definitely like the gateways, and then like people kind of move on from there and sort of decide what path they want to go to. And I also feel like Egyptian gods are kind of like just gateway to any sort of witchcraft. I feel like that's like the first thing that anybody ever studies because it's so readily available, and then they realize, oh, there's other things that exist, like Celtic religions and Norwegian, and you know, like even things that are personal to them, any sort of like Aztec or whatever, what have you, based off of where they came from. But like I think it's really interesting because Egyptian gods are literally 100%. You can't talk to a person that's not like, yeah, well, I got into Egyptian gods and then it just kind of went like from there. It's literally almost everybody.
Yes.
So
everybody, yeah, it is straight a gateway. It's so weird, but it's also so amazing too, because you would think, you know, more movies have been made about Greece and Rome, so you would think those two civilizations would be the gateway, but in reality it's Egypt. And I think it's because it's so mysterious. I feel like with Rome and Greece, it's more humanized, more of a connection, because there's way more information about them. The deities are worse than humans when it comes to behavior and antics and, you know, their jealousy and things like that. So there's almost like we already know about them because we are them. But when it comes to the Egyptian deities, there is this disconnect because they don't act like us. They don't have our behavior. They are more ceremonial. They're more, I don't want to say strict and rigid, but there is this like domineering look to them. You know, they're just intimidating in a way.
Speaking of that, I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. Do you think that because the art varies between, I love history, do you think that the art varying between how the Greeks and the Romans I guess art looks versus the Egyptian art, and how, I guess, how do I describe this? Egyptian art is, you said rigid. It's aggressive. It's got hard lines. And do you think it's maybe that might have that sort of influence versus like Grecian art, and it's all just like naked dudes and kind of fluffy? You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Hopefully that makes sense.
Well, it does. But you have to think about the Egyptians, you know, they were mostly naked too. You know, they had very sheer clothing, so you could still see underneath them. But they weren't like naked like the Greeks or the Romans. Right. So there is very subtle differences, but their artwork between 2D and 3D is astonishing, because even when the Greek civilization overtook Egypt, they still followed in those traditional art phases. And I am wondering, I don't have an answer 100%, just theories.
I was about to say,
but I think
just
with
guesses and theories, because obviously we're never gonna know. But I just felt like because their art is so, it's a lot more aggressive to many other cultures with just the way it is drawn and hard lines and everything, that maybe that could be a reason why it seems so shrouded in mystery. I mean, minus the fact that they're buried in giant pyramids and there's all these other things happening. I just feel like that adds to the mysterious nature of the Egyptian gods in general.
Well, and to also add to that, everybody had their own 3 months that they would become a priest. But even still, that was really shrouded in mystery too. There were hierarchy, levels within it. When it comes to Greece and Rome, you had very specific people that were allowed to be in this. And it was more open. Yes, both had very public festivals, but the worship itself really only revolves around the pharaoh. He is like not only the living deity, but he is also the true priest of that religion itself. And all of the priests within the temple are playing that role. They're pretending to be the pharaoh, step-ins for the pharaoh when he couldn't be at the temple. So there is that more continued disconnect. And I feel because of how ceremonious they were, not so much how strict they were strict, but how do I put this? More rigid in their practices. It was very set in stone. This, compared to the Greeks and the Romans, who were about music, dancing, feast, things like that. It did continue that ideology and that outlook of very demanding respect of it. So it's, the gods to the humans instead of everywhere else where it's like gods and humans, right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, the Greeks definitely made their deities a lot more accessible for sure. So then they're just, I'm gonna say it again, they just knew how to party. I'm telling you. They really did.
Yes.
I also feel like while the Egyptians maybe did document things, I feel like the Greeks and the Romans definitely documented things a lot more than maybe, or I mean, we can't know for certain because I'm sure things are still lost out in that desert somewhere. I'm sure there's probably tons and tons of other things that we could uncover at some point, but it sort of feels like historically the Romans and the Greeks had a lot more, I guess, forward thinking into writing things down and making like historical records. So
it did have a lot more of the historians for sure. I feel like when I compare the two, the Egyptians were fantastic at writing things down, but they wrote things down in a way that how do I put that? That was more about the pharaohs and what they were doing with everything else.
Right.
And their connections with the deities, their divine right to rule, their connections with all of that. And anything else was more commerce. It was more about the day-to-day aspects, not so much of everybody just kind of living life in a way. But with the Greeks and the Romans, you did have people that wrote down what they did. I mean, you've got Plato's Symposium. I mean, it's more fake than real, but that was based on a true symposium that Socrates had went to that had told Plato about. And we don't get drinking parties. We have the Festival of Drunkenness. So with the Festival of Drunkenness, it was a religious festival. The most famous one was held by the great wife pharaoh Hatshepsut. And basically what you did was you just got drunk, obliteratedly drunk. There were orgies involved, and that was kind of the beginning of it. You had that party, but then everybody would pass out. They would pass out in the temple or wherever it was held at, and they would be woken up with the sounds of drums. And from there, they would go into like this religious trance. It was almost like a dance along with it, but not so much. It was get drunk, party, have sex, gain divine insight once being woken up from drums.
That sounds like
I want to replicate
Can
it.
I go? Let's go. I want to be invited. Where's my invite?
So down, yeah. I'm still working on these things. I'm not rich like pharaohs, so these things do take time. But this festival, the deity connected with this festival was Hathor, and so you have that around a certain time. But again, it's religious. It involves the pharaoh. It had very divine and religious timeline, kind of an end goal to it. It wasn't like Party City like the Greeks and Romans. Very two distinct distinct methods of writing everything down. So
I think historically it's important to note that almost every culture just gets absolutely shit-faced and parties. Like every single one. Like, you know, you had all these people, they're like, hey, look at all these cool drugs that we found. Let's go do them and celebrate the gods. Like, literally every culture, you know what I mean? Like, almost every single culture, they're just like, let's go party. Let's go commune with nature and the gods. And I feel like that is such a thing that we still do today. Like, as people, like, we go to the giant festivals and just celebrate life. And I think that is so rad that that's something that way back in ancient times people used to do, and we are still doing it. Like, there's something about dance and music that moves people in a way that I've never seen people move before. And when I say move, I don't just mean dancing. I mean, it's a human connection. That's why I love going to festivals. There's a human connection there that you don't often get by just communicating with people in normal life. People are freer. They want to talk to you about stuff. They want to talk to you about the things they're passionate about. I love that shit. I love when people talk about their passions. Like, I think that's probably one of the big reasons why I started this podcast. Because when people are passionate about things, you can just see their true selves shine through them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I just think it's so important to, like, realize that historically that's just something we've had for generations and generations, all the way dating back to ancient times. Like, it would be cool to know how the cavemen partied, you know? you know what I mean? Like, because you know they were doing it too, but how were they doing it? You know, we only have cave drawings that are just like stick people around a fire. You knew that was a party. Let's, you know.
It's almost like, how did they worship the Venus of Willendorf? You know, they used it not only as like an embodiment of the female goddess itself, a representation of their matriarch, as well as a fertility symbol. You know, women trying to have children, they would rub it, they would hold it, you know, they'd keep it. Even during labor, they would hold on to it. It was a total charm. Right. It's like, did they dance around the fire for her? Like, how beyond did they go with the Venus of Willendorf? Right. In very prehistoric, pre-dynastic times. It's incredible. We'll never know, but it's such a wonderful thought.
But like, even just thinking about it historically, that's the one thing that connects us through history is dance and music and I guess passion in general, not just, you know, for gods, but for connection. And I think that's really cool. Okay, so speaking of history, let's talk about some of your least favorite history. What are some of your least favorite historical events ever?
All right, I've got two.
Okay.
And
let's
they both revolve around Egypt.
Perfect. Ancient historical tea. That's what we're doing. Let me get my... All right, let's go.
Tea, yes. Okay, so the first one is going to be in 30 BCE.
Okay.
And that is when Cleopatra the first, or not the first, oh my goodness, Cleopatra the seventh had died.
Okay.
So the reason why I hate that so much is because she, of course, was the final pharaoh. It was the end of Egypt as we knew it. The Greeks really did like inspire a few things, but they really tapped into the Egyptian stuff as well. But once she died, that was like it for Egypt. It was just Rome after that. You had the past remnants, but nothing further. And that's what kills me. That's like the death of Egypt in my eyes, was her death. So that's one of the biggest ones. And I truly, truly have a very, very personal hatred towards Octavian. Like, straight up, I will talk so much smack about him as if I knew the guy himself. Like, I hate him. We have beef. We have issues. And then the second one is the death of Hypatia. And basically that was the end of the ancient world in my eyes. And that was the beginning of the true rise of violent Christianity as we had come to know about it.
Right.
So those are like really my distinct two that I absolutely
I'd say
hate.
that second one's pretty fair, but I don't think I've ever heard of somebody beefing with like an ancient dude. It's like before. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Not to call you out on that, but I
like,
literally have never heard somebody go, I have beef with this ancient old guy. Like, that's pretty great.
I do.
Can we talk a little bit about
I remember back in Michigan.
Oh, you tell your story and then I'll...
I was going to say, I remember back in Michigan, I was checking out the University of Michigan over there, and they had an exhibit. They had busts and plaques that had Octavian's face and name on.
No.
And it took every ounce of me not to scream at him. Like, he's right there in my face. And I'm like, this is my chance, you know? Nobody's around. I'm the only one in this museum. Of course, there's cameras everywhere. So the security people who are watching me are probably thinking I'm just some strange freak talking to this bust. But I literally straight up, I was like, I hate you. I don't care about you. I wish you never existed in the way that you did. And I like flipped him off and I like walked away. Like I spit his name. I hate him.
Let's
so
go down this. Let's go down this rabbit hole because I need to know. So why are we beefing with Octavian? I have to know. Like I really do because I can't wrap my brain around it. Like let's unpack this because it's obviously some sort of historical trauma we need to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go.
Yes, 100%.
I'm ready.
Okay. The guy was so smart. He was so smart for his age and his time, which is fantastic. I mean, he played the politics game so well. Like, nobody knew what the hell was happening. He was amazing in that aspect. But it was his grudge against Cleopatra and everything. I mean, so after Julius Caesar was assassinated, all Cleopatra wanted was her throne and for her son to rule the throne in her stead after she was gone. That's all she wanted.
That's
she was
fair.
Like, have Mark. Exactly. Like, it's her. Okay, when I say this, I'm saying it because her family had, I don't want to say conquered because Alexander the Great was basically Pharaoh in their eyes when he did go there, but her family was on this Egyptian throne for centuries, for absolute centuries. So it was only her birthright that her son come into play. But it's this whole thing of, oh, this is Julius Caesar's son, like I'm his heir, we can't have this, what is she thinking? Like the whole, if I let an heir live, whether it's a bastard or not, there is this threat of them existing. But if you really think about it, he's just a kid, and Octavian is now like 18, 19 when this is going on around that time. This child's like 6 or 7. If you had just confined Cleopatra just a tad bit more and allowed her son to rule, I mean, you could have Egypt literally in the palm of your hands. And who is really there to mess all of this up? I mean, once she's gone, there really just doesn't seem to be a true fight to remove Egypt into its own sovereignty away from Rome. So in my head, he really could have done things a lot different. He really could have saved the Alexander the Great lineage that her family had, the Ptolemy family had. Mark Antony could have lived. You know, there was no reason for Antony to have died after the Battle of Actia the way that he did, but that was because a random letter came to him stating that Cleopatra was dead. So I feel like there was, you know, a lot of decisions that they could have done differently. When it comes to Octavian, he really wanted to obliterate her family, any sort of ties that she had to Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and basically create a brand new foundation for Rome to basically brutalize Egypt and all of their resources. Without them, he could take it over.
He sounds like a shitty ex. Like, he really does. He sounds like he just wants to ruin her. And I'm just like, what? Why?
Yes. Totally. I mean, during this time, the Isis mysteries were heavily practiced in Rome. Even he appreciated Isis as a goddess, as a deity. He respected her. I think he maybe tapped into 1 or 2 worships of her. He was more about the Eleusinian mysteries. But when Julius Caesar died, he disbanded the Isis mysteries. He removed all of that worship. It was illegal to show anything of Isis because Cleopatra connected herself to Isis. Not only was she Isis herself, but she was also the daughter of Isis. So he just like straight iron gripped everything, suffocated her, the deity, the worship, the country. I mean, really everything. And I guess if you're really talking about military strategy, it's brilliant.
It makes sense, but I feel like it could have. It looks like a lot of jealousy and a lot of pent up rage. Like, it makes me wonder, right? Did his people like him? Because if his people didn't like him, but her people liked her, then that could also be like, oh, well, we can't have this.
Well, her people loved her.
Yeah.
They wanted her on the throne. She was the first Ptolemy to ever speak the Egyptian language, to ever take on the Egyptian outlook, like the fitting, the religion, the styles with the crook and the flail, the headgear, everything. Like, she was the only one who really emphasized all of that. So the people loved her. They loved her. They loved Julius Caesar. They deified him. Everything.
That's pretty cool.
There was some iffies with Mark Antony. I mean, he really became a drunk and just like, some people are meant to be leaders. Some people are meant to be second in command. And though he wanted the respect that Julius Caesar had, he was always going to be second in command to somebody, whether it was Octavian, Cleopatra, or Julius Caesar, right? But because of his drunkenness, he just kind of fell out with people. But when it came to Octavian, so his people in Rome, they were sort of iffy because there was a second triumvirate that him, Mark Antony, and somebody else were involved in the Civil War. Nobody wanted civil war in Rome. So the fact that Octavian was doing this, everybody was on the edge of their seat. They were wondering, how is this going to play out? But after he had won and reestablished Rome, he was like the gift from the gods themselves. Everybody adored him. Everybody loved him. Everybody tried to be him, especially emperors after him. If you go through them, you'll see a lot of that in their lives and the way that they present themselves. But nobody wanted this in Egypt. Everybody just wanted to be separate because Rome was taking all of their resources. Their people were dying. They were starving. So this was huge. And so they were absolutely for Cleopatra. And unfortunately, none of her ideas, none of her battles worked out. She did try to plead with Octavian, do what you will with me, but leave my son alone. Let him rule. That's all I ask. Like, I'll even kill myself. Like, I will literally get out of your way. Just let my son rule. And he's like, no. So
gross.
Had she lived, she would have been completely respectfully brutalized by the Romans. And it just, I don't want to say it seems like a rape on the country or the history, but he decimated it. And that's what I completely hate.
Yep. I can see why you have beef. Definitely can see why we have beef. All right, man. Wow, we spilled some tea today. Okay, so let's get back to business. Let's talk a little bit, because I've been wanting to go back to this. When are you releasing your new songs?
Okay, so Les Cités des Morts is releasing in October in honor of me going to New Orleans.
Nice.
So it's French. It translates to the City of the Dead. They have amazing cities of the dead there in New Orleans. So that's kind of my inspiration for the song. Ancestor work, there is I got this cemetery chant from one of my books that talks about New Orleans voodoo and witchcraft and everything else like that. And this chant was under, I believe, Papa Legba chapter of this book. So I'm connecting it with voodoo. I don't know if it's actually voodoo, but there is a cemetery chant in that song. And the rest of the newer songs like Blood Wars, everything else like that will be released next year. I also have a music video coming up, Bloodlust. That and its single will be released at the same time, but I don't quite know yet.
Okay.
And there's maybe 5 or 6 other songs that will be released before this year ends.
So you've been busy. You got a lot going on.
I'm constantly writing.
Let's talk about before we kind of wrap up. I kind of want to talk about what's your experience with New Orleans, because it's been something that I would love to go do. I haven't been able to do it. I've been involved in a lot of vampire stuff for what seems like forever, and it's like because of Anne Rice and because of its history and because of all of the things that have happened there, the vampire community and the vampire tourism is so huge in New Orleans, and I think that's really cool. What are some of your favorite parts of visiting New Orleans in that sort of realm?
So this will actually be my first time.
Oh.
Should have gone back in 2014.
Okay.
Yes. But it's taken me about 9 years to go. But I've learned about NOLA since I was a kid. My mom bought me like this big ass cemetery book that had everything in it. In elementary school, I was reading books on voodoo and hoodoo as well. So there's a lot of that spirituality connection to the city. And then, of course, the vampirism aspects of it too. So I can't say 100% since I haven't gone, but I think the biggest one is going to be the St. Louis Cemetery, number 1, which is no longer open to the public. So you have to have a tour guide to get into it, unfortunately. I would say St. Roch Cemetery as well. He is an incredibly dangerous saint, but also very helpful. And his cemetery actually reminds me of the Asclepius Temple back in ancient Greece. They both correlate to medical health. And both people who have been cured by St. Roch and Asclepius have left like body limbs, not actual body limbs, but they're called votives. Basically, they're like porcelain, different types of stones. So like if you lost your hearing and you gained it back, you'd leave like a replica of an ear.
Oh,
this temple.
That's really cool.
So that's kind of one of the things that I'm like really excited to see in comparisons between ancient and modern history. And then the swamps. I'm really excited to see the swamps for some odd reason. I don't know. And then, of course, all like the voodoo locations and things like that. But I think the recent thing that I've learned about that I'm really, really dying to go to, I think it's called Pop's Fountain. And it's by this lake. And it has an extreme history with witchcraft and voodoo. Like, Marie Laveau is said to have done rituals there. I mean, she's done rituals in St. Roch Cemetery as well. Then there's the witch queen. I can't remember her name, but she did a lot of rituals there too. So everything that I've read at this location, the energy, you can just feel it's way different than anything else around the city.
This is pretty.
So that's something that I'm like really looking forward to.
Speaking of kind of like, I guess supernatural tourism, because that's what this is, really.
Yeah.
Have you been to Salem?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I have.
I just wasn't sure because I know
Salem.
That's like I do too. That's like everybody's like dream to get to. I feel like it's either New Orleans or Salem. It's one or the other, and you have like you're like one's the top and one's the other, and I'm gonna get to both of them, but that's the thing. I love Salem. I think what is happening in Salem is just so cool. Like it's so cool.
I know.
I went during mid-October, which I feel like was the best time to go. I
Oh,
didn't go on October
it
like the
is.
31st. I didn't really want to deal with all of like the people. But it's so cool because it's like so many like witch-owned businesses are moving in and things now, and I am here for it. Like that is so cool.
Yeah, when I went to Salem, it was like May. I was young. I was in elementary school.
That's still cool though. It's like
But
that all year.
yeah, and it is. I mean, you don't get the ambience of like the autumn season, which you got, which I'm like so jealous you got to experience.
Just go.
But just being like, oh God, I need to. I finally went to like LA, then NOLA, been to like Paris. Now I got to go back to Salem and live my adult dream there instead of my kid dream. But I mean, Salem itself, it's just so different, and it's sad. Like I have this like deep hatred against Christianity. So like going there, it almost fueled it because we're near the graves. You know, Proctor's Ledge is where they officially figured out where they hung them. And, you know, you just get that violent history right in your face. And the energy itself, too, I feel like you can feel.
I think that if I were to be beefing with somebody, it would definitely be John Proctor. I think...
Really?
I feel like he's kind of a terrible person. Like... You know, if I had to beef with somebody, I think it would definitely be him. Like, I feel like he should be up there with who we're beefing with. You know, like
the top tier like historical figures we're beefing with.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're good. No, it just took me by surprise because he was one of the accused. And that was a whole shipwreck in itself.
So I wish people just can't be trusted. I'm telling you. All right. So let's do you have any projects coming up? Do you have anything cool coming up?
Let's see here. I do have another performance that's happening in November in Prescott Valley, Arizona. I don't have all of the information, so if anybody is in the area or wanting to travel, keep a lookout on my social media because I will have a flyer soon enough. And then New Orleans, of course, as well. I've got a meet and greet. The first night that we're there, we're going to go around to very specific locations like the Boutique du Vampyre, the Ursuline Convent, and other locations as well. Do like a quick history review. And then after that, I don't have much. I'm just going back to school, so.
Very cool. When do you finish school?
Next year, hopefully.
And
depends on my ancient Greek.
I was about to say, what are your plans after school? Like, what do you really want? Like, what's your dream job?
I have a lot, to be honest. Like, I want to teach, I want to do digs, I want to work in a museum. Either revamping already exhibits that are in existence but just need like a little extra oomph, or doing temporary exhibits, you know, pulling artifacts from museums like the Cairo Museum and allowing people to get a new glimpse at Egypt, not do like the random same old Tut, Ramses, you know, things like that. Travel lectures where I talk about certain subjects and I travel across the nation or the world. But also, you know, building my own temple. For a while there, I have this temple called Ray Cadet Temple where I teach people these reconstructed religions of Egypt, Greece, and Rome. So people who enjoy that, maybe have already dipped their toes in that practice, can get an actual true historical sense of how these ancient people worshipped.
Right.
That is a whole thing, though.
That's really cool, though. I don't know has anybody done that?
there are some reconstructed religions, very, very small groups. But what I'm trying to do is like a massive scale. So like I want to build a legit Karnak temple somewhere here in the US, I'm not sure, where it would be like a spa or a health resort, because people in Egypt would go to temples to heal whatever illnesses that they had. Like have a birthing room, have a mortuary room, and do sort of like museum stuff where people can go and like tour and kind of really resurrect it. But I'm not a millionaire, so.
Well, good luck in finishing school, and you got this. And I know that if that's your dream, everybody should definitely reach for their dreams as much as they can. Investors are a thing, something that exists. So maybe somebody will be like,
it's true.
Hey, I saw you on this podcast and you're doing something cool. So let's just, fingers crossed, knock on wood. So anyway,
yes.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. I appreciate you. Where can people find you?
Thank you for having me on the show. It's been a great opportunity here, so I really appreciate it. And people can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, where else? Twitter as well. You can find me as Lucretia Death or Lucretia Death Music, one of those two, but you'll be able to find me. I'll send you my links too, so you can pop them in the description if you need to.
Absolutely. I will definitely do that. Well, thank you all for joining me for episode 4 of the Coffin Lounge, and I will talk to you all very soon. Bye.
Bye.
Dearly.